Alright, what is up everyone? Welcome to today's game recap video between Ian Nepomniatchi and Ding Liren. Today was game 7. The score was tied up coming into today at 3-3. 2 wins apiece and then 2 draws. And Ian is back on the white pieces today, and he started with e4. And we actually see e6 from Ding, and this is the French defense. The beginning of the French defense, I should say. And the French defense is kind of one of those openings that was played a lot in the old days before I was alive, but in like the 80s and previously. And pretty much, it wasn't necessarily refuted, but I guess it's had to have been reworked to be, decent at like grandmaster level. But even with that being said, for it to show up in a world championship match is kind of rare, because that's when, even the repertoires that are kind of, already been kind of popularized and like everything else is, awful, let's not play it, it gets even more restricted. And there's no like, code like you cannot play X opening, but it's just like they're not considered good enough for the world stage. But yeah, anyway, we see e6, we see d4, d5, knight d2, c5, knight f3, pawn takes on d4, recapture of course with the knight. Then knight comes to f6, so you have to do something with that pawn since there's 2 points of attack onto it. You can either defend it or you can attack or push, and pushing just makes it kind of weak because you can't support it with the d4 square. Then supporting it with the f4 square this early in the game just doesn't make sense. So knight recaptures, knight comes over to f3. Just some more development, bishop e7, bishop to c4, all of them finding some good homes. Knight comes over to c6, so we're going to see a capture. And here, this is all part of the prep, I assume. I don't know the French defense, obviously. But this is now going to be a target for the remainder of the game, because it's an isolated pawn. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be a target anytime soon, but in the future it could be. Castles, castles, queen e2, bishop b7. We see the bishop come back to d3, which I, for one, don't really understand, because normally you want to wait to move a piece until you've moved all your pieces out. And by that same token, normally you want to move your queen out after all your pieces have been moved out. But anyway, that's what we get. Queen comes over to c7, queen to e4. So if you're looking at a checkmate battery, and obviously this is never going to happen. You could just play like a pawn move for defense. You're not going to see this, but you'll probably see either knight coming over to f6, or you'll see this pawn. And we'll see that knight go over, because moving the pawn is going to ruin your structure a little bit. Queen's going to come over, and now we are probably going to have to see a pawn move, but this time it's going to be h6 versus the, what's it called? The g6 that we were going to see previously. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm stupid. It's still defend, of course. Bishop is going to come over to f4. Queen obviously has to duck it, and now this b2 pawn is going to be under attack. And knight to e5. And the reason why the queen doesn't want to take is because you're going to get rook a to b1. He's going to take right here, and the bishop's going to fall. So instead, we get rook to d8. Much more normal move, getting the rook onto an open file. Rook takes his own open file. And normally when you move the a rook instead of the f rook, it kind of shows that you a, want to protect this f2 square, and 2, plan on potentially pushing it in the future. g6. Now we see bishop coming over to g5, and now this knight is being threatened. We're probably going to see it come over here to d5, or we're going to see the queen come up. But the king come up. But the king move doesn't seem too natural, so I'm assuming we'll see the knight. Okay, no, we see a different move entirely. We see something that offers a threat to the queen, and now he has to address that instead of taking the knight. So queen goes back. Queen goes to c7. it realizes that it does not have anything going here as long as the bishop resides on this diagonal, but the bishop does not want to leave that diagonal because it's a very good one. We're going to see b3. Knight over to h5, offering a trade. White does not accept the trade. Instead, he does push that f-pawn. I said he might push earlier. We see bishop change targets over to d6. We see c3. And the knight takes a pawn. And it may seem like a sack, but if you were to take right here, bishop would take on to e5, which is right here. And then the bishop would have to take g6, threatening the mate. So you have h takes g6, then you have c takes d4, then you have c takes d4, and I'm actually not sure what's going on. No, I'm just kidding. You have this mate threat that's going on. So at the end of it all, you'll be perfectly okay. But anyway, see that? The bishop does capture, the rook captures, bishop captures, and he just moves it out of the way. Alright, so now he threatens the bishop on d3. Bishop is going to try to exchange itself, just because this diagonal is rather annoying. We do see the exchange, and the rooks double up, threatening the bishop. If you do it the other way, then you potentially have some back rank threats that are going to occur. So you want to avoid that, obviously. We see rook come to protect it on d5. Rook's coming over to threaten the h7 pawn. And we see queen to d6. And the idea is kind of that, you know, black is not scared of giving up that pawn because this bishop is covering the entire diagonal, so there's no threat. We see the queen come over to e5. He's looking to maybe switch. I'm not sure. Pawn comes over to h5, so I think my suspicion might be correct because now white can no longer do that. We see g3. Bishop to f6. Rook has to go over to a safe square, so that's going to be on c4. You don't want to drop down to h3, obviously, because then your rook's just going to be out of the game for the foreseeable future, unless you were to play g4, which would ruin your structure, you know, just to get your rook out. Not worth it. h4. And Ian recaptures with his pawn, which looks a little weird, exposing the king like this and having these double pawns. And then Ding goes rook to d2. We see Nepo offer the exchange. Rook goes over to d3 now. And what was happening in the game at this point is that Ding actually got into some serious time pressure. The way that the time format works, if anyone's not familiar in the World Championship, is both sides have 2 hours for your first 40 moves. And then once you play your first 40 moves, you're awarded an extra hour. So it's up to 3 hours. You start with 2, and you're required to play 40 moves in order to get more time. And at this point, it could be, you know, off by like a minute or two. But pretty much Ding had 10 minutes on his clock of the initial 2 hours, and he only completed 30 moves. Obviously, both sides completed 30 moves, but Ian was not in this kind of time pressure himself. Ding had much less time on his clock. And he spent 9 minutes of those 10 minutes calculating, I believe it was this move right here, the rook d3. And pretty much, you know, he had now a minute, you know, under a minute to complete 9 moves. And he wrecked his position, he got in some bad time trouble, and he essentially had to blitz out some moves, which kept making his position worse and worse. And meanwhile, Ding had still some time on his clock to think about his moves. So he was able to come up with more accurate moves. So here he took the pawn on c5, you know, offered an exchange. There's no check that you can offer anywhere except for the one that you already offered, but that will not lead to any additional checks. We do see him try, but we got rook f2. King comes over to g7. Rook f4, and now there's simply no saving this position. There's still no check that can be found anywhere. right? They're all blocked. This bishop is under attack from the rooks, so it has to move. But when it moves, this f7 pawn is going to fall with check, and black will be completely lost. Say, for example, you take and you go here, queen's going to slide over here to g5, and there's a checkmate. Say, for example, that you check and he's going to go back to that rank. Same thing, you're just going to check, he's going to come here, check, he's going to sneak here, and it's checkmate again. So even if he had some way to block, or if he took this pawn, or something like that, I mean, you're just too far material down, and I mean, Ding just lost the game really from being in time trouble, unfortunately. But yeah, it seems like Ian takes the lead once again, so it's now 4-3. We do have another game tomorrow. It's 2, then 1 day rest, 2, then 1 day rest. So tomorrow will be the second game, game number 8 to be exact. And hopefully Ding can bounce back from it. Losing is okay, especially when you play on black, since it's been pretty back and forth. But you don't like losing in a fashion, such as that. A lot of the commentators and stuff were saying that he should have been able to, salvage the position, because it was dead even until the move that he kind of messed everything up. And I guess he just didn't see a way out of it. He thought he was lost when really the position was equal. So kind of just goes to show that, computers aren't everything. Just because the position is equal, if it's harder to play, then that sometimes equates to people not being able to find the correct moves. In this case, they lost Ding a world title match game. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will catch you again for the next game tomorrow, and have a good one.